Bonjour, everybody. Hi. Good morning. It is Saturday, June 9th, and a happy Saturday to you. It's a pretty weekend. It's so nice here in Toma, Wisconsin. Sun's out and it's kind of mild. It's about 67 degrees. So it's one of those mornings that many people that I know would be out in their gardens and doing their gardening, and because it's a nice morning and there's very little mosquitoes out for whatever reason. We celebrate that too. We do, because you know that the mosquitoes here are pretty big, and when they put their stinger in you to draw the blood out, it hurts. You know you've been bitten. So anyway, those mosquitoes, we call the mosquitoes here in Wisconsin our state bird. Yeah, because they're so big. And I'm sure other states too, because I've been in Michigan and Minnesota, and let me tell you, your mosquitoes are just as big as ours. Yeah, I know. So anyway, good morning. I'm up here at Star Nations Academy, and you are watching a live stream on Star Nations organization's main fan page. It is a live stream that I do every morning at 10 a.m. Central Time, 11 Eastern. And this is all about a card draw. And every morning, I've been doing this for years, is to ask my spiritual team, what's the most important energy to know today, to know about today, and for the highest good, of course, and that I can share with others. And I started putting a quote from the card deck that I was using on Instagram. That was back in, I think, October of last year. And in May, beginning of May of this year, I thought, well, gee, maybe Star Nations community would be interested in the card draw and knowing a little bit of the backstory that goes along with it. And so I started this live stream. I hope you enjoy it. Take whatever information that we talk about, that we share here, see if it resonates with you. If it does, great. If it doesn't, that's okay. Just let it go. It's not meant for you. And what I do here is I just watch how the day unfolds and how the energy that we are shown, how it manifests itself. As I say, as it flows through me, to me, and around me. Am I bearing witness to it, or am I an active participant with it? And see how it goes. Well, good morning, Elise. It's pouring rain there, huh? Yeah, it's supposed to rain here this afternoon. We're supposed to get thunderstorms this afternoon. If the weather people are right, they're 50% wrong. We just kind of watch nature and see what she's doing. Usually what happens is we see ants. They're building up the ridge of their homes so it doesn't get flooded. Or sometimes we actually have ants in the house. And I think what they're looking for is someplace dry to hang out until the rain passes. So good morning, Mary Ann. I'm so glad you're here with us too. I'm so glad you join us every day, and I hope that some of the information that you hear is helpful. And that's part of the intention, isn't it, to be of service, to our community through Star Nations, and the other part is just to be together, to hang out a little bit in the morning, share our coffee, our tea, or beverage, talk about spiritual energy, and share. I love it when you guys ask questions or make comments, and we have an actual conversation, which is great. So I'm up here at the academy, and we had to do a little bit of moving around the other day. A good friend of mine, Deborah Morel, she is a shamanic healer, trained in the South American way of shamanism, and she meets a client here every once in a while because it's a convenient and location for the two of them, and so we had to rearrange it from a recording studio to a healing space. And so you might see things just a little bit different than what we've been in placement and that kind of thing. That's why. And I love it up here. It's so quiet. Elise is saying thanks, Neshi means a lot to her, meaning Mary. Well, I'm glad. Mary and I are going to become good friends, meeting on every morning to hear about what Spirit has given us as a card. And this morning was a card we've had before, and this is Sacred Space, about respect. And, I say this every day, but that artwork is something else. This is a cute little child in the middle of a sacred circle of stones. And the stones each have a color of one of the directions. And it's about establishing your sacred space and respecting not only your own sacred space, but the sacred space of others. And this is the first time. Jamie Sams is the card that we're using, is the Sacred Path cards. And I have to admit that the first time I drew this card and was reading the information that Jamie wrote about, it was the first time that I had took in the information about sacred space that had just a little bit of a different perspective. And I'll share why. Is that the sacred space that she's talking about isn't the sacred space that, as a feng shui and space clearing professional, that we deal with homes and outdoor space, and creating a sacred space, right? Removing lower vibrational energies, and in that place, putting in the intention of the homeowner, and raising the vibration to the kind of energy that they want there. Usually it's peace, like a sanctuary kind of thing. And some place, when they come home, it's a place that they can relax, right? And know that they're safe. So that was my idea of sacred space, setting sacred space, holding sacred space, right? Jamie Sams writes about it as in boundaries. And it's just not in the physical world. It is also in the spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical world. And we talked about boundaries yesterday. I think it was Jill. Jill had raised a question about, if we're all moving into the oneness, why do we need boundaries? And so it's interesting that Spirit decides that this is the card, this is the information that we're going to have today about sacred space and respect. Yeah. Jamie Sams writes about how in a lot of Native American families who have lived more of the traditional cultures that they're from, because each one of the tribal nations here on Turtle Island, North America, have their own culture, have their own beliefs. There's many places where they're the same, and there's many places where it's just slightly different. And what she's referring to, remember, she wrote this in 1990, okay? So what she's referring to is talking about children and teaching them about sacred space. She's really referring to an older generation, ancestors. Some of which was probably more than 500 years ago, some a little bit more modern than that. What she writes about is how traditional indigenous people would teach their children about respect. And a lot of it was role modeling, being respectful of other people's sacred space, other people's boundaries. So let's say, for instance, in modern time, that would be a child's bedroom, their belongings, that they have a space of their own, and that it should be respected, right? And just the opposite is that if there's the parent or the adult in the home has their own sacred space, their room, where they work, that kind of thing, that's their sacred space, and that should also be respected. So, in other words, you're not going to cross over into someone else's sacred space unless you're invited. That's what we talk about as boundaries. Boundaries, that line in the sand, if you will, or that circle around you, that you establish. That's your sacred space. You decide. You decide who comes in and who doesn't. Those are your choices. If somebody barges in, some people would term that as disrespectful and also could possibly be an attack, right? And depending on who the person is and what the situation is. And so the boundaries are healthy boundaries are good. That doesn't mean that you keep everybody out. It just means that you're selective. It's almost like a filter that you have set up so that those people who are around you are respectful of your sacred space and you of them. And you're kind of like birds of a feather, you flock together, right? That's what we call a community. And even those that are the closest to us, family, good friends, sometimes what they do is they test the boundary. And you can deem it as a negative, I suppose. But in many ways, it's a way to be able to either redefine your boundary. Yeah, that's a good one. Redefine your boundary, because sometimes it is being maybe you don't need a certain aspect there anymore because you've grown, you've healed and you've grown, and so now you can adjust it. Or maybe because of your growth, there's a different way of being protected, being safe, who you let in, and so you need that adjustment as well. It's a change. And so sometimes those closest to us will test those edges to give us an idea that we need to adjust something. And relationships, we all have to work at them, no matter what kind of relationship it is, whether it's a spousal relationship, whether it is a partnership, whether it is a mother-daughter, parent-child, sibling, brother, sister, sister-brother, those kind of relationships. We all have to work on them. We have to pay attention to them. We have to nurture them. When we don't is when we start drifting apart and sometimes growing apart, and that's part of the change, right? But boundaries and sacred space. Jamie's, we've covered this before, and as I was rereading it and considering what is it for the energy today, what jumped out at me was this piece that she wrote. She said, each aspect of our world has its own space in which to create. If that space is respected by others, growth continues in harmony. So when we establish our boundaries in all of our bodies, and they are in alignment, right? In the alignment, that we have harmony and that our growth is in harmony. And I had to think about that a little bit because some of us experience growth, those growing pains with difficulty, and so how does that happen? And so if I was thinking, okay, now what if we have to take a look at each one of our bodies, our physical body, our mental body, our emotional body, and our spiritual body. And as we set up and create those boundaries, or at least we turn our attention to the boundaries that we've set, we have to be honest with ourselves and say, is this the kind of boundary that is necessary and that I want? Who are you trying to keep out, or who are you trying to keep in? I recently did a show last week, Tuesday. It was for communications from home and my live stream show. And the title of the show was Who's in Your Vibe and Who's Not? And a lot of that had to do with boundaries and growth and how we change as we grow, as we gain experience, life wisdom. We start using our gifts and our talents more and more. because we've healed and we can express those in a clearer way. So those changes, sometimes what happens is that the people around us start to shift. Our life shifts. And so with those shifts, we also have to revisit our boundaries to make sure that they're healthy and necessary. And especially, I want to say the emotional body, because it's the emotional body that I feel that we experience the most impactful energies. And what do I mean by that? I mean, when somebody loves us, we can feel it through our emotional body, right? When somebody's lying to us, we feel it through our emotional body. Our emotional body is some authors, some teachers term it as our GPS system, our guidance system. Our emotional body is the one that allows the information through in such a way that it's going to grab our attention, both positive and negative. But that's where we notice the most information coming through. At least it's been so in my world. Maybe it's because I'm an empath. That doesn't make a difference. That does make a difference because our boundaries as an empath are very interesting, because the emotions of others come through, and it's part of our gifts. And so we can't really block them out, because it is our gift to recognize those. When you first realize that, wait a minute, this isn't my emotion. Whose is it? When you recognize and realize that you're an empath, and how to see it as a gift and not a curse, right? When we actually pick it up and embrace it, we really do have to set up our boundaries in a way that respects our talents and our gifts, and allowing those emotions to come through us, so we can be of service. Now, that doesn't mean that we take it up for them. We bring in that information to understand it and to help somebody maybe understand it themselves. And in a lot of ways, as an empath, we shift energy. We shift energy, and remember, energy is just energy. It depends on what we deem it to be, whether it's positive or negative. And so if the energy is deemed negative, as an empath, we have the ability to shift that energy, to remove it and to replace it, because we understand it, we feel it. And so when we walk into a space, because we have our boundaries in place, we can actually do that without doing much other than just walking in the room. Yeah. Good morning, Jocelyn. Hope you're doing well. We're talking about the energy card for today. The energy for today is about sacred space and respect. We're talking about boundaries in all of our bodies. And I was referring to it as an empath, that we really do have to, as we grow, as we learn how to master our gifts, as we do the changes in the healing, I think we do have to go in and we have to adjust our boundaries in one direction or another. And that's really, really unique. That's very individual. When we go in to do our assessment and thinking, okay, is this boundary or this instruction from my boundary, is it still true? Do I still need it? If I need it, then how? Does it need to be different? How do I adjust that? How do I establish that boundary differently? Because as an empath, when we claim our gifts and we start using them, and we realize how much we can help others without taking on their emotions as our own, is to be able to help that person sift through it, and understand it, because we can maybe even help identify it, right? To help identify it. So the sacred space is a space that where we thrive. We thrive in it. And especially if we are very aware, we're consciously awake when we're setting our boundaries, right? And that's what Jamie Sams writes about, is that when we are, how does she put it? If that space is respected by others, growth continues in harmony. Because we need others to grow. We can't grow just all by ourselves in a vacuum. No. We need others, those other souls who have agreed to be a part of our journey with us. We need them, and they need us, to continue to grow and to learn and to experience. And so those boundaries. When Jill asked that question yesterday about then why do we need them, I think this is the reason why, is because it helps in our growth. It helps us to work closer and closer and closer to our original vibration, our original frequency that we came in with. That through those experiences, through life's experiences, what happens is we learn and we grow, right? And through that learning and growing, what usually causes that situation is a trauma of some sort. Whether it's an emotional or a mental trauma, physical trauma. Sometimes when they first occur, they're little. That's when they can actually be a little fun. It's when we ignore them. When we ignore them or we act like they're not there, that it keeps coming back around, until we can't ignore them anymore. And usually that's when we get the cosmic 2x4, right? And so it's through those experiences that we grow. So we have the experience. It's maybe caused the trauma. We learn from the trauma. We heal the trauma. And we have soul growth. Yeah. So if we didn't have those situations that make it uncomfortable for us, we wouldn't have any growth. Yeah. Elise says, wrote a song about that, joining together. Oh, you did. I didn't know you were a songwriter. Are you a poet too, Elise? Do you write poetry? So Jamie Sams, she says defining our boundaries is important. Very important. And she says that it's very important for us to teach children on how to establish their personal boundaries. That when a child's boundaries are invaded, disrespected, crossed, that actually creates trauma. And it's possible that as children, when we have experienced that, it could take a lifetime to heal, depending on how young you are. And I think we all have experienced some sort of childhood trauma of one kind or another. Some more serious than others. And that's a part of our growth, about our healing. I know people who had a childhood trauma and they're well into their 50s and beyond, and they still are working through it. I know one woman, she just turned 99 yesterday, has a childhood trauma that tends to come up every once in a while. We've talked about it. The first time she shared it with me, it was kind of shocking to me because I didn't know about it. And then she says she's never really shared it with many people before. And And so, it was the one opportunity that I had as an adult to an adult. Good morning, Mary. An adult to an adult, someone I care about, right? That I love. Realizing that she has struggled most of her life to feel safe. And so I verbally told her that this is the safest place you've ever lived, that you are safe here. And and to watch how she took that in. And it took a while. It took a little while to, for her to experience that, and to accept it, right? To accept it. Elise said, wrote a song about that, about joining together. I thought she was. Oh, you did. Okay. She's saying, I asked if she was a poet. She says, not really. Songs and sometimes inspired writings. One of my biggest losses with this disease, I just was blessed with, can no longer play my guitar, like losing my best friend. Aw. Yeah, those kind of changes are difficult, aren't they? Difficult to understand and to work your way through it. The leaving behind of something that you cherish, that you enjoy, right? Yeah, I have a good friend of mine. She's an artist, and has had some issues with her vision, and she was considering, picking up a different way of expressing her creativity than with sight, and how to feel through that. And she kind of settled on the cedar flute, and she got an inexpensive flute to learn on, because she figured that she doesn't necessarily have to know how to read music to play the cedar flute. And so she doesn't really necessarily need her vision in the event that she loses her vision. And so she was trying to find an outlet for that creativity, to still be able to be creative, but maybe in a different way. I have to give her kudos for that, because not a lot of people would consider that, But she's also been living with it for a while. Yeah. Yeah, Lisa's saying it's like losing a part of yourself. I totally get that. I understand that. And the sadness that goes, that's wrapped up in there, because that's part of your identity, and so if you're not a guitarist, if you're not a singer-songwriter, then who and what are you? Yeah, it's a big one. It's a big one. I've helped people through things like that when they leave their job or they lose their job. Another good friend of mine had quit her job to stay home with her kids, right? And she went through an identity crisis. And, if I don't have behind my name, my position, my title, who am I? What am I? Am I just a mom now? And I said, well, she's just a mom. I said, you're a CEO of a whole family. My goodness, you take care of everything from A to Z. So she was looking at how she defines motherhood and nurturing, and she had some work with that, and she worked her way through it. Her kids one's graduating from high school next year, and one's just going to start high school next year. And so she's in a much better position than she was when they were babies, that's for sure. Okay, let's see. Jamie Sams, we're going to go back to sacred space. Jamie Sams wrote that one of the most important elements in instilling the understanding of sacred space is to allow children to develop the talents that they have through posing questions that will allow them to think for themselves. Because one of the things that she wrote about is that in her Seneca tradition, the tribe that she is a part of, that they encourage their children to find a special place just for them. It can be outside, anywhere outside. It could be, of course, anywhere inside as well. But it's their sacred, it's their place, it's their sacred place. And that it's a place that they can go to be on their own for a little bit, to spend time by themselves, to maybe even be creative there. It's their sacred space. It's their special place, and they're encouraged to locate that. And when I read that the second time through, I was thinking, how cool is that? Even if you're not a part of the Seneca traditions, many people have experienced this. Maybe not encouraged by the adults in their life, but have carved out a special place for themselves. Sometimes it's a tree house. It's a fort that you've built outside, right? Another good friend of mine, she in her grandma's house used to go into one of into a closet. It was a linen closet, and she says it was actually a big closet, and she would go in there and take her dolls in there, and she would play in there by herself because it was quiet. And as she grew older, it was a place where she could go and read, a place where to work things out when she was angry with somebody. And so if that became that linen closet became her special place. And she has good memories about that place. And so I was thinking, I think with some people, we naturally find that place. As adults, we call that the meditation room. Or in my case, I kept trying to call my meditation room the meditation room, and every time I said it, it would come out medicine room. And so for a long time there, that's what I ended up calling it, was my medicine room. And so I think that we all kind of have a feeling for it. Yeah, a place that we can call our own. We can, it's part of that boundary stuff, right? It's about, and then having other people respect that, that's your sacred space and your special place. So as a child, when we can establish that, don't you think that we can carry that over into our adulthood? I think so. Because we recognize the feeling of it, right? That this is a place that I can actually go and kind of relax and be myself. And we do. Some people actually call it their kitchen. Not me, but some people do. Here's a sentence here that kind of jumped out at me. Jamie Sams writes, "Every inch of our Earth Mother is home of one life form or another." So we share, even though we may have our special place. If it's outdoors, we share it with nature. We share. If it's indoors, we share with the energy within that house, right? And so in the physical world, we may have our sacred space. We may have our special place, but we also share it. We share it with nature. We share it with spirit. We share. Yeah, I kind of like that. Because we're never alone. We have our spiritual team with us 24/7, 365. They're with us the entire way. Every step, every breath, they're here. And so we're never alone. The application of the card. This is the card. Sacred space. It's about respect. Right? The application of the card. This card insists on respect for the possessions, ideas, homes, and persons of others. This also applies to demanding it for the self, for yourself. It says, respect yourself so that others will see that reflection in themselves and in how they deal with you. Be willing to say no. Yeah. To be honest with yourself and truthful with yourself. And if somebody's asking you to do something for something, and you just don't feel it resonate, and say no. It's being truthful. It's being respectful of your sacred space and theirs. And theirs. They might not see it that way right away, but it is being respectful. She goes on to say that sacred space means that you can consider your body, feelings, and possessions sacred and will not allow others to abuse them. Only invite those who have earned the right into your sacred space. You are the one who sets up how other people treat you through how you treat yourself. So here's that reflection thing, right? We did the great smoking mirror yesterday. Here's that reflection thing, that if someone is reflecting to you disrespect, you have to kind of step back and say, okay, so how am I respecting myself? What are they seeing in me? And, to be honest with yourself about it. If you're not respecting yourself, and you want others to respect you, then you got a little work to do, to work on how you learn to respect yourself. Yeah. Mm-hmm. She goes on to say that if you allow others to be destructive in your sacred space on some level, you don't have the guts to be disliked. In other words, telling them no or telling them to leave. Because if you tell them to leave, they may not like you. And so if you're a people pleaser, that's hard to say, a people pleaser, that's something that you really have to look at. That you don't want to be disliked. And nobody does. Come on. That's, who wants to be disliked, right? Nobody does. But if somebody is trampling all over your sacred space and is being disrespectful of your boundaries, and you're allowing it, you really have to take a look at what you're doing and what you're saying, because something is really out of alignment. And that's a part of the growth process, right? The maturity in all your bodies. And when you say enough is enough, that's when you reestablish your boundary. And maybe you even have healed something for you to be able to do that, or in your process of healing that, right? Yeah. You know what my mother used to say to me? Oh my God. Especially when I was a teenager. This was when I was a teenager. Sometimes she'd be upset with me and say, sometimes you just don't give a damn what other people think. You just do what you're going to do. There's others in this house. It's like, but I was telling them, no, get out of my room. It was, and so she would say things like that. But my mom sometimes was a people pleaser, and it's a generational thing. Those that grew up and knew about the 1950s, women were supposed to be a certain way, right? And so you had to fit into that box. You had to be the good girl. You had to be, you had to fit into that box. And so a lot of women learned how to people please, to shove aside their own beliefs, their own thoughts, their own desire to do something else. And then along came the baby boomers. We shook things up. I'm near the tail end of that generation, but still, we shook things up. We changed the world, especially those early baby boomers that are more born into, that grew up and did all those protests and things in the 60s and 70s. We changed the world. We can do it again. We could team up with the millennials. Okay, here I go. That's the Sagittarian in me. I digress. She says that it's not important to be liked by others, but it's important to be able to live with yourself. Happiness begins within. So that is the sacred space. It's about respect. And if you have children, if you have grandchildren, nieces or nephews that are pretty young, and you can help them. You can help them learn how to establish their sacred space, set up their boundaries. You can do that by example, a role model, a mentor. Yeah. Okay, here's a thought. In my undergraduate work, I was a psychology major in my undergrad. I love psychology. I do. But what I learned was that through psychology is I learned how to take apart something that was whole, us. And we take a look at every little piece. And some call it the inner child, some call it the id, ego, superconscious, we've broken it down. We call it different things. But we all still have this child within us that makes up the whole. And that inner child, maybe what we need to do is help that inner child to learn how to set up boundaries. If we never had that before in our life, we can be our own mentor. We can learn how to set up boundaries, to teach that part of ourselves, that inner child, how to set up healthy boundaries. It's about taking care of and loving, nurturing our own inner child. Okay. Well, I think we got the crux of the information, the energy for today. Yep. It's about nurturing our inner child, learning how to role model, setting up boundaries, learning about them. It reaches quite far. Thank you, India. She's saying, great nurturing your inner child. Yeah, it's helping ourselves, because as that undergrad and learning about psychology and how that, which was once an art form, turned into a science, we took it apart. We took ourselves apart to understand those aspects, those elements. Now that I'm far beyond that undergrad work, that master degree work, is looking at the whole again. And maybe this is a part of that, is helping ourselves we nurture our inner child to learn how to establish those boundaries. Yeah. If we've never had that opportunity before, in order for us to continue our healing and our growth, that is a tool that we really need, is those healthy boundaries. And we have to do it in all four bodies: our physical, our mental, our emotional, and our spiritual body. All four. Lisa's saying, different subject, but one of my grandsons just moved to Michigan from Arizona, has a full academic scholarship of U of M, and as soon as he finishes his pilot training, has been accepted into NASA astronaut training. How proud is? Of course. Oh my God, that's huge. That is so. He's doing some good stuff there, Elise. He really is. You know what? He is using all of his gifts as best as he possibly can. Yeah, that's great stuff. And so proud. You have something to be proud about, that's for sure. I remember when our niece went into West Point. Nobody even knew she was interested in the military or anything like that, until she was almost ready to. She was waiting on the acceptance. She had done all of the paperwork, and then there's a lot of hoops to jump through. And she was in West Point. graduated from West Point. Now she's graduating her advanced, it's like an advanced degree, but I can't remember the term of it in the military. But she is taking her boards to be a nurse practitioner. She's going to be, she's a PA. And yeah, she'll be heading over to South Korea in the fall. So yeah, lots to be proud of. Congratulations to your grandson, Elise. Always thought he'd be a model. He's a I know. I have a nephew like that too, and I still think he should be. He's in his 30s now, but he could have been. Could have been. Yeah. Well, you know what? His looks probably helped him a little bit in his career. I would think. All right, here's the poem. The poem for Sacred Space. Great mystery. Teach me to honor the laws of sacred space, the customs and traditions of every creed and race. Great mystery, teach me to develop the talents that I own and to behave with reverence in another's home. Great mystery, teach the child in me to accept with grace the part of sacred mystery found in every space. Oh, I like that. That last stanza. Great mystery, teach the child in me to accept with grace the part of sacred mystery found in every space. That's a good one. I like that. I like it a lot. Well, with that, on a Saturday, I am off to continue working on the magazine, Star Nations magazine. We publish on the 10th, tomorrow. And I am doing the tango with a video thing. We almost got that one fixed. And then we're going to be testing the magazine, and hopefully everything is going to test out and all the links work and ready to go. And then we'll be almost a half a day to a day ahead of schedule. Yay! Yay! Yeah, so I'll be doing a little thing for the promotion of the magazine to get and tell you guys all about it. The June issue, I think you're really going to like a lot of those articles. They're pretty good. If you love cats, there's a couple of them that are really good. With that, have a great Saturday. Have a great Saturday, and I'll see you tomorrow morning for tomorrow's card draw, and we'll see what Spirit has for us tomorrow. In the meantime, see how Sacred Space, the information that we shared today, what resonated with you, see how it comes to you, flows through you, around you, through you, and see what happens. Are you an active participant? Are you a bearing witness to something? Yeah. So enjoy your day. I'll see you tomorrow. Bama Mina, Potawatomi for until we see each other again.